So when I was 21, I made this really big mistake, and I got married. And I was 21, and of course I knew what I was doing, right? Like, I was in love with this man. We were going to live the rest of our lives together, you know, have all the kids, and I never wanted children. And then I was just like, well, no, we're gonna get married. It's gonna be great, right? He was 13 years older than me. He was also a tongue-talking, holy rolling Pentecostal preacher. So I had some bad judgment at some point. Anyway, so I do want to sidebar really quick. I have 3 older brothers. We're not like a huge Irish family, but I've got kind of a big personality, you know. If words didn't work, you beat the shit out of them. And that's how you solved problems. You always tried with words first, though. But anyway, so my middle brother, what I call him, Joe, it's the day of my, it's the day of my wedding. And I'm like nervous. I'm like, something doesn't feel right? And I'm walking out of the place where we got dressed. And one of my brothers, I'm holding my bouquet, and one of my brothers, he pulls me aside, starts to walk with me, and he goes, Emily. I was like, what? You're supposed to be somewhere else. And he goes, if you're not sure, Neil's outside and he's in the car. And you don't have to do this. And I was like, how fucking dare you? I'm in love with this man. I'm gonna marry him. I'm like a 21-year-old. I knew everything. So we got married. Before we got married, we were living in Virginia, and we would come up to see my family every weekend. 2 states away, about 3 hours. And as soon as we got married, something changed, something shifted. And I don't want to say aloud, but all of a sudden I wasn't allowed to see my family anymore. It's like it just slowly started to change. And I'll tell you, my mom's pretty cool. She's one of the strongest people I've ever met. And she would call and talk to me because I didn't have a phone, so she could only call his. I didn't have a car. I didn't have internet access. I was allowed to garden, though, and I loved that. That was cool. You know, it's kind of like the boiling frog. If you put it in hot water, it'll jump, but if you slowly start to change things, you don't know that you're being boiled alive, right? So my mom survived a lot of interesting stuff in her younger years. And I remember she came down to see me, and it was this pinnacle moment. She saw me, and I'd lost 80 pounds. It was hot. I didn't have any clothes that fit. I was wearing my husband at the time's clothes, and he was like a 3X. So I'm like tying t-shirts, and like I'm sewing jeans, because I was told we couldn't afford new clothes for me because, things were tight and blah, 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 blah. But my mom showed up, and her face changed when she saw me, and she goes, what's happened to you? I was like, what do you mean? She goes, there's something different. She goes, you don't have makeup, you don't have a phone, you don't have any social interaction. She goes, I don't know where the fire is that you've had your entire life, but it's being stomped out. And she asked me, are you happy? And I went, And I want to say she stole me. So she pulled me away, and she brought me here for like a weekend or something. And I was actually able to be out of the house. We went back, I think like 4 or 5 days later, and I demanded that I get a job and have a car, and a few things changed. And I ended up leaving my husband 2 or 3 times. And there's been this thing throughout my life. I can call my mom, and depending on like my inflection and the tone in my voice, she'll be like, what's wrong, baby girl? I'm like, nothing. So this one time, and I think I'd already left him 3 times, and he somehow like roped me right back in. And I called her, and I was just like, Mom. She goes, what's wrong? What happened? And I was like, I don't know what to do. And she's just like, are you happy? And I said, no. She goes, then why don't you make yourself happy? She goes, you're the only one that's in control of it. You're the only one that can change it. She goes, make yourself happy. And I went, okay. So I think this was 9 a.m. I packed everything I could into my vehicle. I waited for him to come home, and I was just like, this is bullshit, and I'm leaving. This is, This was New Year's Eve, actually. And I went to a friend's house and I stayed, and I was like, I swear to God, I'm not spending a New Year's Day with you. I'm like, I'm not starting another year under your thumb, right? So I leave. I hadn't talked to my mom since 9 a.m. the day before. And I drove to Pennsylvania in my 1999 Dodge Grand Caravan, full to the brim with my stuff. And I parked outside and I called her and I was like, hey. She goes, what's wrong? And I'm like, do you need a roommate? And she went, yeah, when should I expect you? And I was like, in front of her house, I'm like, I'm outside. And she, in her pajamas, whatever, she has the phone, she opens the door, she goes, come inside, it's cold, I'll make coffee. Thanks, that's it.